Okay, we can start.
Start. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to open the Anaheim Public Utility Board meeting, call it to order. Can we start with the roll call?
This is the verbal roll call vote. Vice Chair Seymour.
Here.
Board Member Abdul Rahman.
Here.
Board Member Baroldi.
Here.
Board Member Bala. Board Member Bala. Board Member Showalter.
Here.
Chair Madrano.
Here.
Board Member Guyona is absent today. Let the record show that we have a quorum.
Thank you. At this moment, I'd like to open it up for public comments. Have we received any public comments?
Yes, Mr. Chair and members of the board, we have received one public comment emailed to the board members. What I'd like to suggest is that we bifurcate it because there are some parts of the public comment that are not related to the public hearing, and then there's some parts of the public comment that are related. So what I would suggest is anything related to the water rates would be addressed during the public hearing. But in terms of the other questions, she asked about the meter read and about water usage on her bills. Those are specific to her situation, and we have our staff working directly with her. They've tried to contact her via her email address that she supplied, and we haven't heard back yet, but we'll be in contact with her to get the actual details, tell her about the metering situation, and we can have staff even go out to her location to explain physically what's going on with her meter. And then we can, again, address rate-related the part of her inquiry as part of the public record during the hearing.
Thank you. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, we have approval of the minutes of the Public Utility Board for December 16th. I'm assuming everybody had an opportunity to review the minutes, and if so, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
This is John Seymour. I'll make that motion.
Motion made by Vice Chair Seymour. Can I get a second?
Second by AB.
The second by AB.
Second by Member Rahman. Roll call vote, please.
This is a roll call vote for item number 1. Motion made by Board Vice Chair Seymour, second by Board Member Abdul Rahman. Vice Chair Seymour.
Aye.
Board Member Abdul Rahman.
Aye.
Board Member Baroldi.
Aye.
Board Member Bala.
Aye.
Board Member Showalter.
Aye.
Chair Madrano.
Abstention.
The vote is 5 ayes, 1 abstention, 1 absent, not present. Motion carries.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda, we have a presentation on transformer replacement program. Mr. Lee?
Yes, thank you very much. This is something that staff's been working really hard on over the last number of months following the summer heat storms, and I'd like to turn it over to Janet Lonecker at this point. Janet?
Yes, thank you, Dooku, and good evening, Mr. Chair and board members. I'm sure we all remember back in last September of 2020, we had a heat storm where we experienced 30 transformer-related power outages over a 3-day period. It overwhelmed our crews, and we had to call in for mutual aid assistance, which we received from Burbank Water and Power. So typically in the past, under our reliability metrics, we've seen our direct bury cable and mylar balloons being some of the most frequent causes of our outages. But this equipment is moving up in the ranks in our metrics. And so we brainstormed on how to accelerate our transformer replacement. And our transmission and distribution manager, Fred Barvares, is here with us tonight, and he'll give the board an overview of what this program is about. So Fred, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet, Dooku, and PUB Chair and board members. Slide 2, please. Under the program, we will accelerate our proactive replacement of transformers, and we'll use analytical tools such as transformer age and accessibility to prioritize them for replacement. We intend to make the improvements last for the long haul, and as such, we'll use a one-touch approach to upgrade the associated support structures and components at the same time to avoid repeated repairs and service disruptions due to related failures. Also, our upgrades are intended to meet the present and future needs of our customers for the next 30+ years. Slide 3, please. We have 3 types of transformers depending on the specific needs of our customers and the available real estate to place the equipment. Overhead transformers in the left picture are installed along backyards and city streets to serve our customers and serve other loads such as streetlights. Pad-mounted transformers in the middle picture sit on a concrete pad with a vault underneath to route the underground cables and are generally larger in size and are intended for our commercial and industrial customers. Underground transformers in the right picture are primarily intended for our residential customers and are placed in front yards, within apartment complexes, and in the greenways along city streets. Slide 4, please. We have experienced somewhere between 17 to 45 transformer-related outages per year over the last 5 years. Our overhead transformers, shown in yellow, are susceptible to weather, loading, and animals, and those outages can vary depending on heat storms and high wind occurrences. As such, overhead transformer failures are not as consistent as the other types. Pad-mount transformers, shown in green, are usually very reliable with the lowest number of outages. Subsurface transformers fail because they typically reside in a harsh environment below ground, subject to water and debris intrusion. Slide 5, please. Our one-touch approach will improve service reliability for our customers by making comprehensive improvements. This eliminates the need for incremental repairs for outages caused by old facilities that were not upgraded, which cost more in the long run. So the planned upgrades include replacing the poles with stronger ones to withstand higher wind speeds and accommodate larger transformers to meet customer loads. And we use fiberglass arms to avoid wood rot. And we install animal guards to reduce outages, as well as add external fusing to allow for quick service restoration and trim the trees where needed. We also repair concrete pads and vaults for surface-mounted and underground transformers to prevent debris and animal intrusion. Slide 6, please. Here are some examples of how these improvements are implemented. Picture on the left shows a wood crossarm on a pole supporting our high voltage wires that's cracked and will be replaced with a fiberglass arm that will last longer. The picture on the right shows PVC tubing covering our transformer high voltage wires and a protective cap that prevents outages caused by animals climbing the pole or birds landing on the transformer crossarm. Slide 7, please. As we replace our underground transformers, we also inspect the structures housing them for any needed repairs or replacements. It is the same with concrete pads supporting our surface-mounted transformers. Slide 8. We expect to replace up to 2,000 transformers over the next 5 years and plan to prioritize them based on a number of factors that include outage history in the area, transformer age and condition, equipment accessibility with backyards being a priority, and heavily loaded transformers more prone to failure during high heat. Also, as an asset management approach, we plan to integrate our AMI data to track number of customers fed from each transformer and transformer loading to proactively replace those that are overloaded or exhibit other problems such as flickering lights. Slide 9. Our current budget is about $5 million to replace approximately 200 transformers, which doesn't include direct buried cable or undergrounding projects. We're proposing $11 million to effectively double our current program, and we may need to increase it further, but feel this is a good step forward to improve the transformer replacement program. Slide 10. We plan to implement a multi-pronged approach to accelerate the transformer replacements. To ensure timely delivery of equipment and material, we're developing multi-year agreements to purchase them. These agreements provide us with more leverage on price and delivery terms and incentivizes the vendors to participate and provide more comprehensive bids versus the current one-time purchase orders. Our crews will be replacing the transformers with emergent need for upgrades, such as those that fail or are substantially degraded, or when a failing cross-arm or pole requires transformer removal. We plan to use our master agreement contractors for construction for smaller upgrades within the neighborhood. The larger design construction awards with multi-million-dollar scope involve improvements in multiple neighborhoods throughout the city. Slide 11. Since our field verification and construction activities may involve accessing our customers' private property, including backyards, and affect their electric service, we provide them with notifications in advance. We also provide a 48-hour notice before outages are scheduled to switch to the new transformers. After all work is complete, the contracted crews, with confirmation by our utility inspector, will ensure that the area is cleaned up and any affected landscaping is restored. Slide 12, please. Going forward, we realize that the need of our customers will continue to change. Electric service reliability is increasingly important because of medical devices, home-based businesses, distance learning, and telecommuting. In addition to different uses, the timing of energy use will continue to change due to solar producing in the middle of the day, whereas electricity demand by EV charging or air conditioning use continues into the evening, all of which impact the electrical grid and stress transformers differently than 20 years ago. Therefore, our program will take into account the transformer sizing, splitting customer loads between transformers to avoid overloads, and other methods to refine our replacement program. Slide 13. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
So I just wanted to make a comment before we move to questions, Mr. Chair. Before, I'd say about 10 years ago, we had a very significant issue with direct buried cable. It was prevalent in different parts of the city, but we were seeing very high numbers of outages, and it's very disruptive to neighborhoods. So we started a targeted approach to address direct buried cables. We set up its own budget line item that we spend roughly about a little over $5 million per year. And so there's a dedicated funding source to make sure that we address those cable replacements. And we've done a lot over the years to really refine and make improvements in cable failures. There's still an issue, but they're addressed a lot more proactively. And it's a combination of our engineering staff and our field staff collaborating together to figure out, let's look at metrics, but also use real world examples on areas that need to be prioritized. So we'd like to take that same type of approach. We definitely depend on metrics and analytics. We incorporate field input, and then try to devise a program that kind of focuses on transformers, because we know with the numbers that you saw, over 10,000 transformers, we need to have a program to really replace these things in a systematic fashion. So I'm really pleased with the work that Janet and Fred have put into this type of a program and thought process. And we're hopeful that we can get support from the board in this process.
Thank you. Are any members of the board or any questions?
Yeah, this is John Seymour. I have a few questions, actually. Number one, a comment. I think the program itself is very good, and I think it is targeted and is well thought out. Given that, is there a predictive life for our transformers by type?
Fred, can you help with that?
Sure. We have transformers that are 50+ years old in the system, and so they can last that long, as long as they're not subjected to harsh overloads or other environments. So we do design them for 30 years, and we certainly have gotten our money's worth out of a lot of these transformers that we're planning on replacing.
So 30 years is basically our predicted life.
So I would say that 30 years is what we would anticipate, but in reality, in some cases, like Fred mentioned, where there aren't the harsh conditions, they've exceeded our expectations up to 50 years. So that's why when we look at prioritizing, we want to look at kind of a whole suite of factors, not just the age, because that could be misleading. And what we don't want to do is overspend and start replacing things when they're in good working condition. So that's what the inspections and some of the other assets of the program will help.
But we have 13,000 transformers in service. And if we do 2,000 over 4 years, I'm wondering whether or not that's enough, basically.
Yes.
To be ahead of the game in terms of making sure our service to our customers are uninterrupted.
Yes, we had that very same conversation, Mr. Seymour, and what we'd like to do is try to figure out what is that sweet spot. Right now, we're anticipating just doubling, because it's not just a matter of funding, it's also a matter of resources, whether it's inspectors, crews, contractors, etc. And then we reassess. So if it looks like we're able to support this level and we can accelerate it or further improve it or add additional funding to it in following years, we will absolutely do so. But we'd like to try to take a little bit of a gradual approach, and as opposed to tripling it or something else immediately.
Yeah,
We're
what I'm interested in is an assessment over time of whether or not we need to find more capital in order to fund this program to assure uninterrupted service to our customers. That's my real question.
Were you going to say something, Janet?
Yes, Board Member Seymour, some of the other things to address your question of the 13,000 transformers we have in the field. And the criteria we are using, particularly here, age, location, loading, all of those things. Our inspection programs uncover some of these problems with our transformers, our vaults, and our other equipment. So that gives us some visual indication of some of the deterioration of our equipment. We do that on an ongoing basis. In fact, we are starting that up again here shortly this year with our overhead inspection. So that'll give us some indication. What we're also moving towards is, as we've talked about in the past, we have automation in our system, and that automation gives us analytics and data. And what we want to do is move towards a way that we can monitor transformers, transformer loading, equipment, and whatnot. And over time, we're trying to get there with the automation and analytics that we can use versus just visual and age and some of these other indications. So as we work towards a transformer replacement program, it's going to include what we have here, which was just sheer metrics that we're seeing a lot more transformers, particularly these overhead transformers, these type of overhead transformers that we're going to target immediately. Then as we build on more of our technology and more of our ability to for insight using systems to monitor this equipment, I'm hoping that will uncover a lot more targeted areas where we can focus on versus some of the means we currently have. I hope that helps with some of the question you had.
Yeah,
Let me just,
I think that's all good. I think I would just leave it this way, and Dooku's kind of already said it. As you go forward in this, since a transformer is a significant part of the network and controls many customers, I think if you find out as time goes on that we're going too slowly, that all I ask is you come back to the board.
absolutely.
Absolutely.
And
I think Dooku's already said that, but that's the end of my questions. Thank you.
One other thing I wanted to mention is, when we've talked about debt in past presentations, we've said specifically that we want to leave room in our portfolio, our financial portfolio, so as things come up over the years, we have the financial flexibility to do things if indeed we have to accelerate. So I think we're in a situation where if we needed to go down that path to look for additional funding to help with accelerated replacements, the financial team has given us the flexibility to do so. And obviously we'd come to the board with making that type of recommendation.
Terrific. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the board have questions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
My question here, how safe is the underground transformer? Because the way how I look at it, it's kind of prone to water irrigation or rains. And I just want to know those kind of underground transformer, how much were rated for, like for how many kV? Because it seemed to me it could be really unsafe in some instance. Like the one I saw in the picture, it looked like really bad.
Yeah, so let me start with the response, and certainly Janet and Fred can jump in. AB, when the underground transformers, the ones that we're talking about, they're single phase. And what that means is they're residential, street lights, things of that nature. We do not put three-phase or commercial transformers in subsurface vaults for the very reason that you mentioned, because they live in a very harsh environment. You have dirt, debris, water, irrigation, all those things that affect the life. And when we talk about the 50-year-old transformers, typically it's not the subsurface ones. They're about 30 years or sometimes less. And so as a result, the harsh conditions they live in, they do have to get replaced a little bit more often than some of the other ones. Pad mounts tend to last quite a long time because they're above ground and they're not subject to standing water and things of that nature. So it's something that we do take into consideration. The issue is our residential development community customers, they don't like seeing the green boxes. And so there's a strong preference to put things subsurface. So there's an aesthetic element to that. So we offer that choice to developers, pad mount where we can find a good location where it's not obtrusive, and in other cases, subsurface. So we try to find a balance point, but we, like I mentioned, we don't put the large transformers underground.
Thank you.
Do we have any other members of the board that have questions? Hearing none, thank you very much. We will move on to the next item. The next item we have is an action item. It's a proposed modification to the water and electric rates rules and regulations. We have a staff report?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to ask Brian Bielner to introduce this item. Brian?
Thank you, Dooku. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, as you well know, we continually look at our processes, procedures, rates, rules, regulations on a fairly routine basis. And in that aim, we have identified some rule changes that we would like to propose to the board and for recommendation to City Council. So I've asked Jason McBride, our Financial and Strategic Planning Manager, to present this item for you this evening. Jason?
Hi, good evening, members of the board, members of the public. As you know, Anaheim Public Utilities has developed and implemented several measures to help customers during this financially challenging year. And as Brian mentioned, we regularly review our rules to make sure that we're keeping up with the evolving needs of our customers. So tonight, we're proposing rule modifications that enhance the utility's ability to offer benefits for customers, both now and in the future. We're proposing to formalize the utility's authority to provide water and electric bill credits during declared emergencies, including the current pandemic. These credits are integral to partnering with our customers during times of great disruption, and they reflect Anaheim Public Utilities' customer-focused approach. We're also proposing to modify the bill credit incentive that we offer to customers who elect paperless electronic billing and automatic bill payments. We currently provide a credit of $1 per bill, and we are proposing to change that to an upfront, one-time $10 bill credit. Electronic billing reduces processing time as well as paper, printing, and postage costs that the utility incurs. So sharing that savings with our customers is appropriate. It also improves convenience for our customers who can access their bills anytime, anywhere from their own personal electronic devices. Additionally, automatic bill payments contribute to timely collection of revenues and also provide convenience for customers who no longer have to write checks and mail those checks to the utility. A third proposal enhances the existing electric bill credit that we provide for unplanned extended outages by adding flexibility in the amount of the bill credit that the utility can issue to customers in order to improve the alignment of those credits with the inconvenience that those outages cause for our customers. Other modifications include minor grammatical corrections and enhancements to general information that's contained in the introduction pages of the rates, rules, and regulations. These proposals do not increase rates to customers. We're seeking a recommendation from this board for the City Council to adopt the proposed rule modifications effective March 1st, 2021. Thank you.
Any questions for members of the board on this item? I have a question. Regarding the emergency assistance rule, does that apply to residential customers only? I'm curious why it doesn't include businesses, schools, non-residential entities. Given the time that we're in and this pandemic, small businesses in particular are struggling. And so it'd be nice to see if we could get assistance to some of the small businesses, restaurants, and other service providers.
That's actually a good point. And let me turn to rule number 3, which contains that information just to verify. Currently, as proposed, it says apply bill credits to provide temporary relief to residential customers. So let me ask Allison, would it be feasible to address modifications to Rule 3 for both electric and water to change that to just customers to give us the latitude to develop assistance programs as needed when there are declared emergencies?
Yes, we can make that revision. It would require a slight modification to the proposed motion. Would you like me to suggest what might be appropriate to say?
Yeah, please.
So what we would say is that by resolutions presented to the board and as fully set forth, that the City Council determined that the modification to rules numbers 3, 4, and 23 and the introductory page of the water rates, rules, and regulations, and rule numbers 3, 4, 14, and 23, and the introduction page of the electric rates and rules and regulations are exempt from CEQA, and further that the City Council approve, subject to striking the word residential in section E1B of electric rule number 3 and section F1B of water rule number 3, the proposed modifications to the water and electric rates, rules, and regulations effective March 1st, 2021.
So that would be the motion if you would like to include that. Basically, we would take the word residential out and to provide broader latitude to provide assistance to non-residential customers during emergencies.
Yes, that would be helpful. I'd like to make that motion, and if I can get a second to that motion so we can open up discussion with members of the board.
I'll second the motion.
Seconded by member Baroldi.
Any
Any
questions?
questions or any discussion on this item? Hearing none, can we get a roll call vote?
This is a roll call vote for item number 3, motion made by Chair Madrano, second by Board Member Baroldi. Vice Chair Seymour,
Aye.
Board Member Abdul Rahman,
Aye.
Board Member Baroldi,
Aye.
Board Member Bala,
Aye.
Board Member Showalter,
Aye.
Chair Madrano.
Aye.
The vote is 6 ayes, 0 nays, 1 absent, not present. Motion carries.
Thank you. And our next item, we'll be moving on to item number 4 on the agenda. This is a public hearing concerning modifications to the Water Commodity Adjustment, WCA, and Water System Reliability Adjustment, WSRA rates. At this time, I'd like to open the public hearing. Since no petitions for intervention have been received for item number 4, I will call upon court reporter to swear all staff witnesses who will speak or otherwise testify regarding item 4 on the agenda. Do we have the?
Yes, sorry, I had you on mute. I apologize. Yes, whoever is going to be speaking, if you could get on camera and raise your right hand. Do we just have the 3?
I think there's people in the room too.
Stand.
Okay, I can't see who's in the room. Let's see.
Our general manager, Dooku Lee.
Okay. Can you raise your hand really high? Okay, good. It's very hard to see you. Okay, so I've got 4. Okay. You do solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Yeah.
I do. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Reporter. Prior to opening the public participation portion of this hearing, I would like to explain the procedures that the Public Utility Board will follow in conducting a public hearing. I would like to point out that the interpretation services are available by a Spanish interpreter by using the phone number 714-3311. En Spanish, me gustaría señalar que servicios de intérprete en español están disponibles utilizando el número de teléfono 714-765-3311. In terms of procedures, first staff will present its oral and prepared testimony. At the completion of staff's entire presentation and testimony, the board will have an opportunity to ask questions of staff. Written protests and public comments, if any, on the proposed rate actions will be provided to the board before the record of the public hearing is closed. Staff may present closing remarks and the board will have an opportunity to discuss the proposed actions. Staff will then move that the testimony and record be accepted into the record of the public hearing. If any board member has a question about the procedures for the public hearing, please direct your question to me or Mr. Belin, the attorney to the board. Does staff wish to make a presentation?
Yes, thank you. Good evening. My name is Allison Cott, and I'm an assistant city attorney with the city of Anaheim and represent Anaheim Public Utilities in connection with the proposed water rate actions that are before the board. Brian Bielner, Assistant General Manager, Finance and Energy Resources, would like to make some opening comments. And at the conclusion of those remarks, Anaheim Public Utilities will call 2 witnesses, Brian Bielner and Dooku Lee, Public Utilities General Manager, to present oral testimony. Mr. Bielner?
Thank you, Allison. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, members of the public. My name is Brian Bielner, and I serve as the Assistant General Manager of Finance and Energy Resources for Anaheim Public Utilities. During my presentation today, I will provide information and respond to questions regarding the proposed increases to the Water Commodity Adjustment, or WCA, and the Water System Reliability Adjustment, or the WSRA. The WCA specifically recovers costs to purchase, pump, and treat Anaheim's water. Tonight, we propose to increase the WCA by 14 cents per 100 cubic feet. This proposed increase is to recover the increasing cost to purchase water. For context, 100 cubic feet of water is the same or equivalent to 748 gallons. We also propose to increase the WSRA, or Water System Reliability Adjustment, by 7.5 cents per 100 cubic feet. This proposed increase will pay for improvements to Anaheim's water distribution system, such as allowing for faster replacement of aging water mains. Next slide. Anaheim's potable water comes from 2 primary sources: the local groundwater pumped by wells in Anaheim, but managed by the Orange County Water District, and imported water, which we purchase from Metropolitan Water District. Groundwater is less than half the price of imported water, so we primarily use groundwater to serve our customers, with imported water from Metropolitan Water District as a secondary source. However, in late 2019, the state of California issued new regulations for water agencies regarding substances referred to as PFOA, commonly referred to as, or PFOS, PFOA and PFAS substances. These regulations caused the department to shut down the majority of its wells, as those substances were detected in the local groundwater. PFOA and PFAS are widely used in consumer and industrial products, such as fabrics, carpets, firefighting foams, food packaging, and nonstick cookware. The issue is not limited to Anaheim or even to California, as these substances have made their way into groundwater and food sources throughout the country. Curtailing the use of wells will now require us to purchase more imported water at more than double the price. This decrease in the use of groundwater and corresponding increase in imported water, coupled with an increase in Metropolitan Water District rates, have caused the utility's overall water supply costs to increase. Next slide. APU works tirelessly to keep its costs low. This adherence to efficiency is becoming even more important with these cost increases. In order to mitigate higher costs, we have used a multifaceted approach. We manage our debt portfolio to limit interest expense. We prioritize capital projects in order to meet system needs while minimizing the amount of cash used. And on top of these measures, we maintain a comparatively low headcount compared to our peers, keeping labor costs at less than 10% of our annual budget. Recently, 27 public employees opted to retire under the city's accelerated separation program, leaving a substantial void in many critical positions within the utility that will not be filled immediately in order to further minimize our costs. As you can see, we continue to do more with less. Next slide. The table and chart before you shows the actual cost changes by component of the WCA compared to 2020 compared to 2021. We cannot avoid some of these costs or reduce these costs. Water supply costs increase year over year typically, and despite that fact, total water consumption with Anaheim has remained relatively flat, even with an increasing population. Typically, rising costs are generally the result of increased prices charged by the Orange County Water District or the Metropolitan Water District. More recently, however, the large increase in water supply costs was driven mainly by the change in the mix of water as we reduced the amount of groundwater and increased the use of imported water. The proposed increase to the WCA is the result of these higher water supply costs, as shown before you. So what is the plan for us to return to our normal mix of water? We plan on installing groundwater treatment facilities that filter out the PFOA and PFAS from our groundwater. To help fund this, we have entered into a reimbursement agreement with the Orange County Water District. This agreement will ensure that OCWD funds the majority of capital and some of the operating costs of the anticipated groundwater treatment facilities. Currently, we are acquiring the necessary properties and identifying the appropriate treatment facilities to properly remove the substances from water. In the meantime, we continue to leverage our existing agreement with Metropolitan Water District to ensure we maintain reliable water service to customers while simultaneously employing financial strategies to limit the impact to customer bills. Next slide. We expect to resolve the groundwater PFAS issue and resume pumping a greater portion of Anaheim's water supply from groundwater in phases over the next several years. These phases are identified in the slide before you. In addition to designing and building groundwater treatment facilities, the City Council authorized Anaheim Public Utilities to pursue litigation to recover the related mitigation costs from those entities responsible for the PFOA and PFAS levels in the local basin. Our strategy to treat groundwater and restore groundwater as Anaheim's primary source of water supply in the future will help ensure a reliable and high quality supply of water for our customers for many years to come. A smaller portion of the proposed rate increase is to replace aging pipe and other system components. The city has approximately 750 miles of pipe and should replace about 7.5 miles per year if you look at it from a 100-year life cycle. We have replaced less than 3.5 miles per year over the last several years, so we are proposing to increase the WSRA rate to help move closer to the goal of 7.5 miles per year, and also to help gradually reduce the need for bond issuances over time to fund other necessary capital improvements. It's important to note that the WSRA rate is limited. If you can go back to the previous slide, the WSRA rate is limited to a 7.5 cent per year increase. So you can see at the bottom of the green table, it is planned to go from 75 cents per 100 cubic feet to 82.5 cents per 100 cubic feet, even though the math of the formula allows us to go in 2021 to $1.19.7. We are capped in how much we can increase the rate. This ensures that our customers are protected from large spikes in their bills as our capital program needs increase or decrease over time. It's a smoothing of the rate change. Next slide. It is important to note that these two rates both prescribe very specific formulas that factor into the costs associated with their respective purposes. The WCA formula ensures recovery of Metropolitan Water District, Orange County Water District costs, pumping costs, and treatment costs. It does not recover any costs related to Anaheim staffing, pensions, or other administrative or general costs. As you can see in the table on the screen, the WCA formula prescribes a rate increase more than double what we proposed tonight. We fully understand the financial and personal impact COVID-19 has had on our customers, and we think it would be imprudent to raise rates any higher than we are proposing. So in order to help mitigate the impact on customers' bills, the formulaic rate is substantially offset by the use of financial reserves. In fact, we are proposing or projecting to use about over $3 million of reserves to help mitigate the impact of this rate change. This proposal not only impacts our reserves, but also has resulted in a rating downgrade by Fitch Ratings. Although keeping rates artificially low is not a viable long-term strategy, we are pursuing it at this time to help our customers during this most trying of times. Next slide. Under this proposal, a typical residential customer who consumes 1,600 cubic feet of water per month, or about 12,000 gallons, will pay $3.44 per month for their water. Individual customer bills may vary depending on their consumption. We continue to offer rebates for water-efficient appliances to reduce household water use as a way to lower utility bills and offset the increase. We also currently offer emergency bill assistance through bill credits to customers, or the credits that we proposed tonight in agenda item number 3. We are not disconnecting customers from utility service for non-payment, and we continue to offer payment plans to help those who are behind on their utility bills. Even with the proposed rate increase, Anaheim customers will continue to benefit from economical water rates. Just to give you some perspective on the value of Anaheim's water, you can see in the slide before you that if a customer were to drink 2 water bottles every day for an entire year, they'd pay about $1,000 for that water. If they just bottled that water from their tap or through a filter attached to their tap, it would cost them about 50 cents for a year's worth of the same water. Next slide. Here you can see an actual bill from a Chino Hills water customer compared to what that same customer would pay in Anaheim under the same meter size and water consumption scenario, about 30% lower in Anaheim compared to Chino Hills. Next slide. And here you can see the comparison of actual charges for a Golden State Water Company customer, a privately owned utility, compared to a publicly owned utility like Anaheim, compared to what a Golden State Water customer would be billed in Anaheim. We're still, again, about 30% lower than Golden State Water. These savings are substantial and highlight the financial benefit to customers from being here in Anaheim compared to other territories. Next slide. I've reached out to customers in various ways to inform and educate them regarding proposed modifications for you tonight. Some of the ways are here. You may have seen some of these notices and bill inserts that we've sent, but we have used every medium at our disposal to help inform our customers of the impact to the bills and some of the relief and options they have to help mitigate the cost of water and electricity. Next slide. As a not-for-profit agency, the utility strives to provide reliable water service with the highest levels of satisfaction. The water rate before you this evening represents actions that are necessary to recover the water utility's costs of providing the high-quality, safe water that our customers expect from us. And that ends my opening comments.
Thank you, Mr. Bielner. Mr. Chairman, at this time, I'd like to call Anaheim Public Utilities first witness, Brian Bielner. Mr. Bielner, what position do you hold with the city of Anaheim?
I currently serve as the Assistant General Manager of Finance and Energy Resources for Anaheim Public Utilities. I've been with the city since 2005.
Thank you. Did you prepare or cause to be prepared testimony for the purposes of today's public hearing?
Yes, I did.
On or about January 15th, 2021, did you cause copies of your prepared testimony with exhibits to be served on members of the Public Utilities Board, the Anaheim City Clerk, and all of the Anaheim Public Libraries?
Yes, it was served to all those that you identified, except, however, for Ponderosa Public Library, which is currently closed to the COVID-19 pandemic. So instead of serving it to the Ponderosa Public Library, we delivered it to the closest community center, the Ponderosa Park Family Resource Center.
Do you have any corrections or additions to your prepared testimony?
No.
Is your prepared testimony with attached exhibits true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes, they are.
Do you have any further testimony at this time?
I do not.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, at this time, I'd like to call Anaheim Public Utilities next witness, Dooku Lee. Mr. Lee, what position do you hold with the city of Anaheim?
I'm the Public Utilities General Manager for the city of Anaheim, and I've been here with Anaheim Public Utilities since 1999.
Did Anaheim Public Utilities staff cause a notice of public hearing concerning the rate actions to be published in newspapers of general circulation in the city of Anaheim?
Yes, the notices of the public hearings regarding the proposed rate actions were published in the Orange County Register and Anaheim Bulletin.
Did you cause the affidavits of publication of the notice of public hearing concerning the rate actions to be filed with the Secretary of the Board?
Yes, I did.
Did Anaheim Public Utilities staff cause a notice of public hearing to be prepared and mailed to the property owners and water customers in the Anaheim Public Utilities service territory?
Yes, they did.
Approximately how many notices of public hearing were mailed?
Approximately 81,173 notices of public hearing were mailed out. There were 1,698 notices in Spanish and 79,475 notices in English.
What criterion was used by the Anaheim Public Utilities to develop the mailing list?
In an effort to reach as many current property owners as possible, a notice was sent to all record property owners listed on the Orange County property tax roll as of December 31st, 2019, the most current tax roll data available. Additionally, a notice was sent to all Anaheim Public Utilities water utility customers as of October 1st, 2020.
When were the notices mailed?
The notices were postmarked on December 8th, 2020.
Did you cause the certificate of mailing to be filed with the Secretary of the Board?
Yes, I did. The certificate of mailing contains English and Spanish versions of the notice of public hearing, an electronic set of the two mailing lists, and mailing transaction receipts dated December 8th, 2020.
Were any of the notices returned?
Yes, only one notice was returned because it had been torn in delivery, so the address was incomplete. The previously undelivered notice was resent to that customer.
Do you have an opinion as to the reason why so few notices were returned to the city?
Yes, in an effort to reach current occupants, staff asked that the notices be delivered to the identified person, business, or current resident.
To your knowledge, did Anaheim Public Utilities, the Secretary to the Board, or the Anaheim City Clerk receive any calls, correspondence, or written protests concerning today's hearing?
Yes, we did.
Please elaborate on the type of public contact received by Anaheim Public Utilities and its response, if any, to that contact.
We received 35 customer service phone calls as of today. 13 customers requested a Spanish translation of the notice. One customer requested information on how to submit a written protest, and 21 customers had general questions. Our customer service representatives responded by providing the information requested and answering the general questions. We've received 18 written protests as of today's date. Of the 18, 3 were letters that were mailed or hand delivered, and 15 were received via electronic mail or email. Copies of all protest letters received as of today were mailed electronically for the board's review and consideration.
Did you cause those written protests to be filed with the Secretary of the Board?
Yes,
Do you have any further testimony at this time?
not at this time, no.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, that completes the foundational questions for the prepared testimony and exhibits and Anaheim Public Utilities additional testimony. I request if there are any questions from the board, we take those questions at this time.
Request granted. I have a few questions for staff. First, could you explain why we don't rely exclusively on financial reserves and avoid a rate increase altogether when customers are struggling in this time?
That's a good question. And
Excuse me. Can you identify who's speaking? Since there's a lot of people in here and I lost you at what rate increase?
The person that was speaking, this is Allison Cott speaking, and the person who just asked the question was Ernesto Madrano, the chair of the Public Utilities Board.
Thank you.
would you mind repeating your question, sir?
Can you explain why we don't rely exclusively on financial reserves and avoid a rate increase altogether when customers are struggling at this time?
Okay, and this is Dooku Lee, General Manager, responding initially, and I'll ask Brian Bielner to help me as well. We did look at different models, financial models that considered whether or not we can either forego or delay the rate increase. And as Brian mentioned in his comments, we were actually downgraded in our water utility recently. And so we've tried to figure out how can we maintain basic services and financial levels to meet the bond covenants and other financial requirements that we have. And the compounding effect of delaying or completely relying on our financial reserves would have a negative consequences several years down the road. Essentially, what this means is we'd be kicking the can down the road to future rate customers, ratepayers. So that's my initial response, and then I'll ask Brian Bielner if he can add on to that.
Sure. Thank you, Dooku. This is Brian Bielner, Assistant General Manager of Finance and Energy Resources. Mr. Chair, as you well know, we do not keep a lot of cash on hand as compared to other water agencies in the local area. We rely on lean reserves, just enough really to operate day-to-day business. So to deplete those reserves could significantly impair our ability to meet our obligations. Additionally, as Dooku mentioned, these rate increases would have to happen in the future. So you would look at bigger rate increases in the future, not only to recover the ongoing costs, but to fill the hole that was then depleted by delaying a year. So we think it would have a deleterious effect on customers in the long run to forego or delay this rate change.
Thank you, Mr. Billner. Another question, Chair Medrano, I have another question regarding the potential recovery of costs since the city council authorized legal action. If Anaheim receives some type of compensation, will it affect the water rates in the future?
Yes, so this is Duke Lee, Utilities General Managers responding. So if there is some type of a settlement that occurs in the future, please keep in mind that we're a cost of service agency. And as a result, any additional revenues, whatever the source is, it gets put into the financial models to determine how do we just recover our costs. And so I want to let the board and the public understand, because we are a not-for-profit agency, we can't over-collect. We're only allowed to recover our costs. So if there's additional revenues that come in for whatever reason, we put it into the formulas and it determines how we can recover our costs. And in some cases, we've had credits that we've given to customers. For example, right now on your electric bills, customers are seeing about a $5 credit, and that's because we're not able to over-collect. So it would be the same thing. If there is additional monies that are found in the future, it would go into the formula and it would determine what our cost of service is in order to determine if there's a cost credit or something else in the future. Brian, did I miss anything on that?
No, you've hit the nail on the head. I would just like to add also that in the past, we've received revenue or monies from other sources, selling parcels of land, et cetera, that we've used to augment customer bills as well by pulling from those reserves as opposed to raising rates. So this would be something similar. This supplementary source of income would then go to augment our revenue stream, as Dooku said, which would then result in lower or static costs to our customers.
Thank you, Mr. Billner, and thank you, Mr. Lee. While none of us on this board likes rate increases, I do realize why they're being recommended. Water is a necessity, and as a resident, I want to make sure that the water I use every day is clean and the service is reliable. With that, does any member of the board have any question that they would like to ask? And please remember, direct your questions through me rather than directed to staff. There are no questions?
This is AB.
Yes, Member Rahman.
Right. Based on, I went over that the people that they contest the rate. I kind of like feeling a little bit worried about, because right now we are in the pandemic time and people they went through a lot of hardship for losing job and stuff like that. But still, I know there's a need for the public utility to continue operating, and they need that kind of financial support. This is kind of just want to make a comments about that. But I'm very sympathized for the people that they contest this increase of rate, but at the same time, I know the public utility they need the financial support to keep going. That's it. Thank you.
May I respond to that, Mr. Chair?
Yes, please, Mr. Lee.
So, Ms. Court Reporter, this is Duke Lee again. And I just, Mr. Abdul Rahman, that's something that we worry about every day. The rates that we recover and the bills that our customers have to pay, especially in light of the pandemic, is something that weighs heavy on us. So as a result, for a typical customer who's using about 1,600 cubic feet or about 12,000 gallons per month, this will be about a $3.40 rate increase. But on that same bill, they're also seeing a $5 credit on the electric side. So we're trying our best to try to make this bill neutral as much as possible. I realize the emphasis of today's hearing is on the water rates, but we're holistically trying to address those concerns that you conveyed to help our customers in any way that we can.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Are there any other members of the board have a question? If there are no further questions from the board, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, in-person and oral communications regarding the proposed modifications to the water rates rules and regulations are not possible. However, members of the public were able to submit comments electronically for the board's consideration. This, in addition to the protest letters discussed previously, have all public comments received electronically been submitted to the board for consideration?
Yes, Mr. Chair, all public comments received electronically were emailed to the board for their consideration. And if you wouldn't mind, this might be a good opportunity for us to address the one that just came in earlier today. And for the board's and court reporters' purposes, if I could read the question. Question is, lastly, based on what actual figures are you planning to raise our fees? How can we, as the consumers, feel confident that your charges are in fact what we as customers should be paying? So it's a very good question, and I'm going to ask Brian if you could help address that question from, this is the Anaheim resident, Ms. Richardson.
Sure, of course. Every year we do go through a rigorous of what our costs are. We prepare this budget to the board that's then recommended to City Council for approval. And then once the year is finished, our finances are then audited by KPMG, who then assures both the city, our constituents, our investors, et cetera, that the numbers we present are true and accurate to the best of their knowledge and obviously to the best of our ability. So with that, I think there's a lot of steps along the way that ensure that the numbers that we present to everybody are 100% true and accurate. And then our invoices, everything we do is publicly available as well. So I don't think there's any cause for concern on the fact that the figures are in fact true and representative of our costs. Now, with that being said, these are forecasted costs. So there obviously could be changes based on consumer behavior or based on other factors. And when that happens, again, like Mr. Lee stated, there are changes or adjustments made to our future rate changes, whether they be up or down based on past performance. We always collect prospectively and then make whatever changes necessary retroactively.
And then I'd just like to add, Mr. Chair, that the majority of our costs are wholesale supplies, both on the electric side and certainly on the water side. And those costs come from two wholesalers. And so it's very clear from the invoices that we pay what those costs are, but they make up the bulk or the majority of our operating costs as a water utility. And so there's confirmation basically on those transactions to make sure that we're paying exactly what we should be paying.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Thank you, Mr. Billner. I'll close the public comment portion of the hearing. Does staff wish to make any closing remarks?
Yes, Mr. Lee would like to make some closing remarks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Providing water to the Anaheim community is becoming more complex than ever. Water supply investments, aging infrastructure, and water quality compliance requirements, they drive our costs, as I just mentioned. Our primary goal is to ensure customer safety, and so the actions we've taken to shut off groundwater wells and rely on imported water is a safety-first approach. However, we fully realize that we are in the midst of a pandemic and that many customers are struggling financially. That is why we're not raising rates to the full extent and instead are leaning on financial reserves to buffer bill impacts to customers and have reduced our budget significantly by deferring projects and non-critical operating expenditures. Additionally, programs have been established to help customers in need. They provide immediate bill relief and leverage both local and federal funds to provide hundreds of dollars in assistance. As an example, we have an emergency assistance program that provides up to $350 in utility assistance for those who are struggling financially. We still encourage customers to be sustainable and use limited water supplies efficiently. And we still offer rebates and other programs to help customers lower their usage, which also lowers their water bills. As a customer-owned utility, we're focused on helping our customers through this pandemic, and the measures we've taken to avoid shutoffs, provide financial assistance have been to limit the impacts of water rate adjustments that are necessary to serve critical water supplies to the Anaheim community. And that concludes my comments, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman, I move that all evidence, oral and written, submitted by staff, including the prepared testimony with exhibits of Brian Milner, the affidavits of publication of the notice of public hearing, the certificate of mailing, the written protest filed with the secretary of the board, and the public comments become part of the record and moved into evidence.
A motion granted.
Mr. Chairman, there are no further witnesses or evidence to be submitted by Anaheim Public Utilities for the board's consideration. Therefore, I ask that the record of the public hearing be closed.
Hearing no objections to staff's request to close the public hearing, the public hearing is now closed. If there are no further questions or comments from the board, and hearing none, I will summarize the information presented during the public hearing. The Public Utilities General Manager previously testified as to the number of notices of public hearing that were mailed to Anaheim property owners and water customers and the number of written protests received. In comparing the number of written protests received to the number of notices of public hearing that were mailed to Anaheim property owners and water customers, the written protests do not equal 50% plus one of the property owners or customers of record in the service territory. Therefore, as guided by applicable state laws, there is no majority protest to the rate increases contained in Schedules W-CA and W-SRA. The increases to the rates contained in Schedules W-CA and W-SRA, as set forth in Exhibits 3 and 5 respectively of the prepared testimony, are effective February 1st, 2021, April 3rd, 2021 respectively. There being no further business on item number 4 of the agenda, I'll move to item number 5 of the agenda. We have quarterly status reports on capital improvement projects. Mr. Lee.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Excuse me,
Yes.
Mr. Lee. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to excuse the court reporter at this time.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Ms. Court Reporter. We appreciate your assistance.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Good evening.
Yeah.
Good night.
Okay. Regarding the quarterly reports, Mr. Chair, what I wanted to comment on is something that we have been stating to the board on our purchases. And so when you go to the spot market purchases, you're seeing fewer and fewer purchases that are being conducted. Right now, you're seeing for the last 3 years, the number of spot bids have reduced from 25 to 5 to 1. And so the reason for that is because we're moving towards multi-year master agreements or essentially purchase orders. And the multi-year would give the ability to get better pricing and stability in terms of locking in a vendor. We had to go to spot pricing a number of years back because commodity prices were all over the place and we could not lock in these long-term rates. So as a result, it's still a valuable tool, the spot bids. We'll use it as needed, but the majority of our purchases are going to go towards these master agreements that are approved by City Council, and it locks in vendors at fixed prices for multiple years. And so that flexibility to still be able to use the spot bids when necessary is still valuable, but we think we'll get better pricing. And as Janet mentioned with the transformer replacements, if we're going to be buying hundreds of transformers, we want to try to get the best deal possible over multiple years, as opposed to doing spot bids that are buying 20, 30, 40 at a time. So that's the reason for that. The other comment I wanted to make is in regards to the master construction agreements. So this last go around, there are 3-year agreements. We put in an annual not to exceed of $2 million for our electric master agreements. And we have come up against that limit. And what we're seeing now from our contractors is that they're pulling back on bidding. So we're seeing fewer bids and less competition because, one, they can't exceed the $2 million cap. And also, they want to pick and choose whichever projects are going to be the most beneficial to them. So we're seeing less and less competition, and now this is starting to affect our customers with higher costs. That causes me concern. And so I've had a discussion with Janet about this in detail. And one of the things that we'll be proposing as the master agreement comes up for renewal later this year is to increase that cap from 2 million to 3 million. So we still get competitive bids in instead of the trend that we're seeing right now, which is fewer and fewer participants in bid pricing. So those are the comments that I wanted to make. And then Michael or Janet, was there anything else you wanted to add to this?
That a couple comments, Dooku, board members, just looking at our electric capital improvement program dashboard. Just some of the things I look for in that dashboard is that we are on track. So I'm glad that we haven't lost much ground in proceeding with our capital improvement program and our projects. We are about 51% spent of our budget for the current fiscal year, which indicates we're on track because we are about 6 months into the fiscal year. So that aligns with what I would expect to see. And I'm actually very pleased that we haven't lost ground because of our workforce, and COVID and separation packages and all that. So really a dedicated group there that has kept the ball rolling. You'll see on the back of that dashboard a few of our highlighted projects here, our street lighting projects as we continue across the city to replace our high pressure sodium with our LED street lights, our conversions. We also have featured here the underground project on La Palma Avenue and Anaheim Boulevard. That's a large development-driven project. It's one of our first that we have worked with the developer who will underground the substructures, provide the substructures while the utility does the electrical portion. And what that does is accelerate a portion of what's already in our 5-year plan for underground conversion. It accelerated this segment because we were able to work with the developer and to have them take on the cost of the substructures while we provide the electrical. So that was a very successful program there. And then lastly, you'll see, again, our direct buried cable replacement. We're about 80% through our direct buried cable replacement, so making great progress there. This particular project features Andover Drive, where we had multiple outages, and which prioritized us to do the direct buried cable replacement in this area. So these customers will be very pleased to have their new cable in the ground and less frequent outages. And that's all I have for electric. If there's any questions, or we can go to Michael, who may have comments for water.
I have just a comment. This is John Seymour. I live just above Andover, and I just want to congratulate that contractor for doing a really good job. He makes sure the street is open, that everything is cleaned, it's set up overnight, and I can't think of a better way or a better contractor to do that particular job.
That's great to hear. And I'll pass that along to our contractor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other?
Michael, did you want to update on water capital?
Yeah, just a quick update. On the quarterly update on the master construction agreements that Dooku was mentioning. With water, we don't have as many projects that are awarded through our master construction agreement as electric. So we aren't bumping up against that $2 million cap problem that the electric projects are with the master construction agreement. I also wanted to point out that we did, if you recall, last year approve, and the City Council approved a master construction agreement for design build for pipelines. And we have just issued our first request for proposals under that new MCA. And the second one will be issued next week. And those will be updated. Those that new master construction agreement will be added to the next quarterly update that we give to the board. And then on the dashboard for the water, the main thing I want to point out on there is the big graph in the upper left-hand corner showing, we're about 50%, we're halfway through the fiscal year, and we've encumbered and spent about 50% of our capital improvement program, which shows that we're on track. And that's a large part because we did fill some key vacancies in that engineering and project management group last year. They're really rolling and really being efficient now with getting the projects done on time. So hopefully we'll be on track for that, for spending all that by the end of the year. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Anything else to report, Mr. Lee?
No, that's it. Mr. Chair.
Any other questions from members of the board? Hearing none, the next item, we have electric system items, an update from Ms. Loniker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Peggy, would you mind pulling up the slides on our safety protocols for down power lines? So board members, you may have seen an article a couple days ago regarding 2 fatalities in Los Angeles resulting from energized down power lines during the rainstorm. That was Monday. It is all under investigation, so we don't know much details, but I wanted to share with the board some of our safety practices that keep our community and our employees safe in these situations. So we have a lot of situational awareness we've talked about our automation and situational awareness, and also we have operators who, dynamically and in real time are able to see when we have a faulted line with our automated systems, and they can dispatch a troubleshooter immediately to the area. And it provides us with a great response. And our troubleshooters are actually the first on site when we do have down power lines. And their primary goal or primary purpose is to ensure that the area is safe and that we cut the lines and clear so that there is no exposure of these down power lines to either the public or to our emergency responders or to our own employees. We also do a lot of coordination with Anaheim Fire and Rescue when we are under these type of situations. And sometimes we'll have multiple outages, particularly during storms like we had on Monday. And our operations will prioritize these outages based on their safety component. So in other words, down power lines are first priority to dispatch our troubleshooters and dispatch our crews. So that's why sometimes when there's multiple outages at one time, and some outages will take a little bit longer for our crews to respond to or to repair, it's because prior outages that they've been working on could have involved safety issues such as down power lines, which, like I said, are our priority at the time. Next slide, Peggy. We also like to focus on our public outreach and education so that the public is aware of how dangerous a down power line is. You may not see anything. There may not be sparks. There may not be movement, nothing. And particularly in stormy weather where there's puddles of water, it's particularly dangerous, which may have been the case in this incident a couple days ago. So as you can see in these pictures, we focus on providing information to our students, to the general public, through our students, through career days, science fairs, and Public Power Week, as you can see in some of these pictures. That's our Electric City, where we demonstrate some of the hazards that you may encounter around electric lines. We also have our public service announcements and use social media to get the word out. And you can see on the right, beware of down power lines. This is a public service announcement that will be going out starting tomorrow. And it will run on our local network channels until the middle of February. So that is some ways that we do get the information out, and I wish we could do more. We do sometimes have, or we do have the benefit also of Southern California Edison also having public service announcements and bulletins and large, I forgot what those are called, the big, along the freeways, the big bulletin boards along the freeways. Those help our community too to get the word out. Even though we were served by Anaheim, those are still public service announcements and tell us how dangerous it is to be around down power lines and to help us get the word out as well. So I'm sure more information will come. And of course, of these things we learn. It's tragic to have to learn this way, but we do have to make it useful and a learning lesson. And that's all I have for electric, if there's any questions.
Any questions from members of the board on the electric update? Hearing none, we'll move on to the next item, item number 7 on water systems. Mr. Moore.
Yes, you guys have the water supply dashboard in front of you, and on the screen, there it is. Our water storage of the top 3 boxes are still in very good conditions coming out of the end of the summer last year. So we are very good conditions with that. As we entered into, up till last week, we were looking at very, very dry conditions here in Southern California, Northern California, and the Colorado River Basin. As you can see in that middle slide there, showing the precipitation, where we're at with the dark bar and where the average typically is. We're way low all throughout where we get water from. And that all changed last week. We got 0.8, almost an inch of water here locally. They got a lot of snow in Northern California and in the Colorado River Basin. So things are improving. And as you probably know, there's a big atmospheric river heading our way that's going to dump more snow here and in Northern California. And you can see that box on the far right, the dark green, that shows you areas that are going to be well above normal precipitation over the next several weeks that they project. So that'd be good. So hopefully by next February, we can report back to closer to average conditions and where we get our water. And that'll relieve the need for Metropolitan Water District to do any cutbacks with their water supply allocation in the future. The other thing I want to update on was COVID, and of course it has impacted our employees. Many of our employees have tested positive and have had to quarantine. Several of them have lost close family members during this, but they're all pulling together, working really good. Morale's really good with all of our staff, especially the field staff, as we deal with these. One other consequence of the COVID is hospitals are using a lot more oxygen and ordering a lot more oxygen, liquid oxygen, for ventilators and for the ICUs. They get their liquid oxygen from the same place we get our liquid oxygen that we use as our primary disinfectant to our water supply at our Linane water treatment plant. So one of our suppliers, it was of a concern, said there will be a shortage, could be temporary shortages for resupplying that. Luckily, we have another supplier that does not have a shortage, so it will not affect our operation, and we're making sure we keep maximum inventory or storage levels of liquid oxygen at our treatment plant, just in case things get worse. We had a community meeting last Thursday with the cities of Santa Ana and Fullerton. It was put on by the Orange County Water District directors from those 3 cities. Our director is Councilmember Jordan Brandman. And we gave presentations to, there's about 50 people for the public there on what we're doing in disadvantaged communities. And we really came across as a leader among the 3 cities with the measures that we take to really help our customers that are struggling with their utility bills, the rebates, the water efficiency and electric efficiency measures that we provide to them. Really came across really strong, proactive as a city. And so I just want to report that to the board. And then lastly, we had our annual inspection by the state of California Division of Drinking Water. They come through once every year to inspect where we get our water from, our Linane treatment plant, our groundwater wells, and go through all of our facilities. For the past 10 years, we've had the state inspector it's been pretty quick, but this year we had a new inspector. He spent over a week going through every one of our facilities with the white glove kind of treatment. And like to proud to report back that we passed with flying colors as far as renewing our water supply permit. We'll get ready for him to come again next year. That's all I have. If there are any questions, I will take them.
Any members of the board have questions on our update on water systems? Hearing no questions, we'll move on to finance and energy resources. Mr. Lee?
Mr. Bielner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. In your packet, we do have the monthly dashboards for both the finance division and for energy supply. As you'll see in the electric revenues, we have so far year to date, we are above budget in revenue, which is quite surprising considering everything that's going on. Correspondingly, we also are below budget on costs for the electric utility. So that's good news as well. So we are seeing a very positive budget variance so far with half the fiscal year over. So through December. Water, if you flip the page to the water financial dashboard, we are about 4% below budget on water sales, but about $2.2 million. But interestingly enough, our costs are also $2.2 million below budget, which means there's no net budget variance for water. So considering everything that's going on financially, we seem to be doing okay. I would like to turn to the energy resources dashboard. What has been interesting in December is we experienced our lowest level of demand since we've been keeping resources for any given month at 277 megawatts. To give you context, our system peak is about 600 megawatts. So this is less than half of what our system peak is. Our previous low was about 299 megawatts, which was March of 2020 when the pandemic first hit. So even though we're selling less electricity, we're above budget in revenue. So as I mentioned to our executive team, I don't know how I can square that circle right now. It's going to take further analysis to see how we're getting more money when we're selling less power. The typical response is billing lag, but I don't think that's it. I think the real answer is our wholesale sales are really augmenting our retail revenue right now. All the excess power that we have to sell, we've really been selling. So it's been helping out a lot. I do want to let the board know that we will be redesigning the power supply dashboard just to give it a different look and feel, to show how we're doing against budget, both more incrementally on revenue and expenses on the power supply side. Instead of just looking at the quantity, we'll look at quantity and price and how we're really doing and give a better holistic view of the power supply portfolio. But if you have any specific questions on the power supply dashboard, I'm not going to go through everything in detail in the interest of time. I think you've heard me talk enough this evening, but it's there for your information in case you have any questions.
Just one comment I wanted to make on Brian's financial dashboard. Please remember that we reduced our budget from the prior year. So while things look like they're holding steady, it's because our overall budget was significantly lower than we had in the prior year. So just point of context.
That is true. And when we present our budget in April for next fiscal year, it will include assumptions on the shelter-at-home orders that we do foresee things hopefully picking up this summer and ramping up over the course of the fiscal year. But we'll go over all that in our April budget presentation. But we did ramp down our assumptions quite significantly for this budget.
Thank you. Are there questions from members of the board? Hearing none, thank you, Mr. Bielner. We'll move on to an update on administration and risk service items. Is Ms. Lehman with us?
This is Janice.
Thank you. Good evening, board members, Mr. Chairman. Included in your packet this month is the quarterly wholesale energy risk management program. This program helps to ensure that the wholesale energy transactions are conducted in a timely manner, but also in a manner that ensures that risks are mitigated. I'm happy to report that all transactions were within the authorized transaction limits during this period. During this quarter in August, as you guys are aware, there was a statewide blackout, and Anaheim was called to curtail resources for an hour on the evening of August 14th. The state has just concluded a very extensive investigation into this by at least 3 agencies, and they came to the conclusion that there was no one root cause for this event, but 3 causes. And it was basically the temperatures were hot. There were not, the ISO did not have a good handle on the number of resources that were available to serve California, and that not everything performed as planned. The demand response customers did not cut load because of the heat. Generation resources and transmission resources were derated and could not perform at their ultimate, their best capabilities. So efforts are underway by the state to ensure this doesn't happen again. One of the things that they have required is that the state's investor-owned utilities have to procure more resources for this summer, and they're also looking at the reserve margins. Right now, there are you have to have 15% reserve margins in addition to your load. They're looking at moving to 20%. And so this could cause increased cost to all energy users in the state and those in Anaheim as well. So more to come on that likely. On the legislative and regulatory affairs matters, the state did delay going back to Sacramento by 1 week. They were supposed to go back on the 1st or the 4th of January. They went back on the 11th, but that didn't slow them down. They've still introduced a number of bills. Right now, the bills are ranging from extending prohibitions on water service disconnections. There's several on looking at decarbonizing buildings. One bill in particular would, for state buildings, prevent any natural gas connections and would require that all utilities have an electric time of use or electric only use rate, something we had back in the 70s. So it's kind of going back to the future. Also, there's a number, as you might imagine, wildfire bills. One of them would increase penalties to $100,000 an incident for not properly maintaining vegetation, and also preventing certain types of development in the high fire threat areas. So right now, new bills can be introduced until February 19th. So we have probably more to come on the state side. There's some good news on the federal side. You may have seen that HR 133 was passed. That's the $25 billion COVID relief bill. Anaheim off the top was allotted between $7 and $11 million for rental assistance that can also be used for utility bills. So right now we're in discussions with the city to find the best use of that money for Anaheim customers. And so more to come on that as well. The next legislative working group meeting will be next month in February. And so I think at that time, we're going to have a number of pretty interesting bills to discuss. All other areas are going well in safety, risk, compliance, and emergency response planning. And that's the end of my report. Any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Lehman. Are there any questions from members of the board? Hearing none, thank you, Ms. Lehman. We'll move on to items by secretary.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to report that in terms of COVID, we've had as high as about a dozen utility employees during basically after the Thanksgiving surge that the state saw. We also saw a surge in positivity cases here in the utility. And we've seen that since subside. So currently we're at 4 employees who have tested positive. And that's out of about 340 or so employees that we currently have. So we're doing our best. The cases have not been work-oriented. They've been in other locations. And so we've followed all the Cal OSHA and respective protocols to ensure safety. And as we've talked to the board before, we're still employing things like driving separate vehicles and other ways to keep people safe. So that's a quick update on COVID. Yesterday at the city council meeting, there were board appointments that were made by the incoming city council members. And so I just wanted to report that Mayor Pro Tem Fessel reappointed Mr. Medrano. Councilmember Jose Diaz appointed AB Abdulrahman. and Councilmember Valencia appointed Norma Campos Kurtz. So definitely, we thank the board members who will continue to serve. And Ms. Showalter, we're just so grateful for your service to the community, your wonderful comments that you've made over the course of your service. And we look forward to celebrating your service hopefully next month. So look out for that. We'll be in contact with you in regards to a way to recognize and celebrate your service here. In addition to that, plan for next month, city council meetings are starting to be held in a hybrid fashion. And what that means is some of the council members are in person, some of the council members are online, and they're starting to allow public comments in person. So we're lagging a little bit, obviously. And so next month, what we'd like to do is allow for the board members who wish to be in person to do so. And we do that down in the Gordon Hoyt conference room and do a similar setup to what we did last year when we were recognizing Grant Bowen on his retirement, but a similar type of layout to provide distancing and sufficient spacing of board members and staff. So we'll provide more details in the coming month for the February board meeting. And we'll still offer remote for those who prefer the remote option. There will be a public hearing next month. There's a formation of a new underground district on Cerritos and Nutwood. And so Janet and her team will make a presentation on that. And then there's also an annual update on expenditures that we've made through our joint action partnership through Southern California Public Power Authority. And so we'll provide an update on that. I do have another item, which is you've seen some different titles in the agenda than what you're used to in the past. And so we've had a reorganization within the utility department that I wanted to share with the board. So this is effective this month. Next slide, please. So this was the previous organizational chart. And you can see that Grant Bowen was, of course, still here, and he was in charge of energy resources that also included information technology, as well as our community and sustainability programs, which are our rebates and efficiency programs. So we've had some shuffling that took place. And of course, Lynn, as you know, also retired. So with those vacancies, we've kind of reshuffled. And so this is what we currently look like. So Janet and Michael's organizations are effectively the same. Janet had some very minor modifications in her work group, but nothing significant. Brian is now overseeing energy resources and information technology. So those groups transferred to him, and customer service, which used to reside under Brian, has now transitioned to Janice. And Janice is the interim assistant general manager of administration and risk services. And that includes all of the different things that she does already with the number of hats that she wears. In addition, she's added customer service, which includes the call center, billing services, and then credit and collections. General services now is a new designation. Melinda Avelino Walker is in charge of that group. So she has made presentations to the board in the past regarding student activities, and she's done things like training, employee development. She also handles all of our human resources activities and interacts very closely with the human resources department. And so she's taken on additional leadership, and the community and sustainability group will now report to her, in addition to communications, contract services, and records. So she will be my fifth direct report. I have a vacancy for Lynn's position. So right now, Peggy and Ida are stepping up big time, and they're fulfilling the duties of 3 people with just the 2. And we'll do that for a period of time, and I hope to do a recruitment for an executive assistant in the near future. So this is the current or the the updated org chart. Just wanted to share with the board that we're doing everything we can to still be efficient with the changes that are happening, the retirements that have occurred, and still deliver services to our community. The last thing I have, yeah, it's okay, you could move out of these. And then can you go to D's? So we had one of our former employees, Dee Treadway, who recently passed away. And she worked in our customer service department. As you can see from the big smile, she was just a very pleasant human being, very warm, and took care of our customers. She had some medical and health issues, and so she recently passed away. And Mr. Chair, if I could request, could we close this meeting in her honor? And that's all the updates that I have, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. At this point, we'll go to items by board members. Member Bala? Any items?
You might have to.
Hearing none?
Don't have any, thank you.
Member Showalter?
Hi. Well, this is a surprise that I'm not going to be on the board because I was told that I was being nominated by Jose Diaz. So it must have been a switcheroo at the last minute. The other thing is, I have a question. Do you have to live in the district that you're representing?
So the rules do not require that the appointment by a council member be for somebody who lives in the district. I think the goal was to try to do that, but I don't think it's a requirement. Allison, is that correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, anyway, that's my only comment. Other than I want to say congratulations to Peggy Starr on her new last name.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you. Member Baroldi?
Yeah, I wanted to bring up something that occurred to me yesterday, and I spoke with Dooku about this earlier. Last year, I enrolled in a level paying plan program with the City of Anaheim Public Utilities. And I was traveling yesterday, got off a plane, and had a message from a customer service rep to call into the City Public Utilities Department to discuss the situation with my bill. I did that, and I was informed that I was behind on my bill, just news to me. Come to find out I wasn't behind on my bill, which wasn't a shock, but we learned something, which is good. So as a part of the level playing plan, they'll tell you to pay a certain amount. So what they want to do is, correct me if I'm wrong, Dooku, but you want to normalize the bill. So I get charged a monthly rate, and it's consistent from month to month. And then at some point during that period, I'm supposed to be able to go up or down depending upon my usage. Well, there was some confusion within the organization, and I have a balance due, but they were calling to let me know that I was no longer enrolled in the plan because I hadn't paid my bill on time. So I think we sorted out a problem, and as I told Dooku, I wasn't upset that I got the call. I'm happy I got the call about it, and we solved I think we solved the problem or headed off a problem before it becomes a problem for, I think currently there's only like 34 or 35 of us enrolled in this plan. And if I'm the only one getting it, I hope I am, the customer service can understand it better. And we can come up with a plan to help truly level the bill and review this before it becomes an issue for our ratepayers.
And if I could just make a comment, Mr. Chair. So this is something where we screwed up. There's just no other way to explain it. We made a mistake. As Mr. Baraldi mentioned, fortunately, there isn't a high volume yet. And as we introduced this program, there's still some bugs to work out. Primarily, I think one of the major issues, it's not explicitly clear, at least on the bill that I looked at, what the balance was. And so it caused certainly some confusion on our part. And then we communicated that incorrect information to the customer, which is just from a credibility standpoint is not acceptable. So I've had discussions all day with Janice about this, and we're working on making the appropriate fixes to make sure that there's proper documentation. And we got really good feedback from Mr. Baraldi, and I can't thank him enough for giving us very constructive information so that we can make improvements and be a learning organization, which is what we strive to do. Janice, did you want to say a few comments about where you are with this item?
Yes, I do. Hold on one second. Let me get my camera on. Taking me a minute. Sorry. Thank you. I'm so glad this did come to our attention, and that Board Member Baraldi, your patience is very much appreciated. Yes, we are looking at the bills now. We've got a couple of plans that we're going to make it very clear what the, here's the level pay amount that's due each month, and put notes in for our customer service representatives that clearly identify this as a level pay program customer, and that so the amount isn't overdue, but they are on a different type of a program. So again, we apologize for that, but as you said, we really learned something new, and so we are working with the system and how we display the information on the bill, and also the training we're going to be doing with our customer services representatives. So thank you.
And I want to say, just for the record, I was not upset about the call. I'm actually happy I got the call. It was me. My biggest concern, because my understanding was the program was in place to help people level their bills so it can become more consistent rather than fluctuate throughout the year and become a burden. Personally, I don't care. I'm lucky. But there's people that aren't lucky that have trouble with a monthly bill. And if all of a sudden they receive a bill that is, I'll be real honest, my monthly bill was, I think, $500, and I'm getting a bill for $600 for the delta in this year versus the last year. No big deal. But for a lot of people, that represents a huge challenge and obstacle to overcome that some people wouldn't be able to overcome. So I think moving forward on this plan, what we need to do is come up with a way to review, make sure people aren't in arrears too far, so that it is truly a level plan for them. And if you see them spiking, or you see that they're not using as much energy, I don't know, over a quarter or biannually or whatever, do it, because I think the program's fantastic for most people. And I think we just got to work out the bugs, and I think that's very doable.
Very
Thank
much
you.
so.
Yeah.
Yep.
Excellent. Thank you, Baraldi. Moving on to Member Abdul Rahman.
Yeah,
Any
nothing
items?
to add. Thank you.
And Vice Chair Seymour.
Yes, I just want to say that I'm delighted that Ernesto and AB will continue on the board. I'm very sorry that Julie won't. You've been a really good contributor, Julie, and I just appreciated you being here. But I wanted to say thank you. My question is there any change on term limits that came out about this?
Yes, so this was a miscommunication with the city clerk's office. And what happened was, when we first inquired earlier in 2020, we were informed that if someone has a partial term, that it can, there's some ways that it gets counted as a term. And we got further clarification from the city clerk recently saying that if the partial term is less than half of that term, so instead, if it's a 4-year term and somebody served less than 2 years, then it doesn't count as a full term. And so then that clarification came back, and that's what we conveyed to Member Medrano, who fit into that particular scenario. So I asked Allison to double and triple check to make sure that it's absolutely correct. Did you want to say any comments on that?
We did verify it. The city clerk's office was very helpful in sharing their approach to things, and we have appreciated their assistance.
Therefore, could you let each of us board members know when our term limit will actually be over?
We will. At the next meeting, we will.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Seymour. Anything else, Mr. Seymour?
No.
Thank you. For myself, I have one item I'd like to get on the agenda. Unfortunately, I was not here last month. I wanted to get it last month, but there was a lot of chatter in the media on the community choice aggregate. And there was a deadline at the end of the year for cities, not our own, of course, but others that wanted to formulate a community choice aggregation. I think there was like 4 cities or 5 cities, I can't recall exactly, that did that. So in all this, I started being intrigued, what does this really mean? So I thought it'd be good to get a presentation for us to understand what a community choice aggregation is in terms of how we deliver public utilities and what the differences are and pros and cons. If so, we can
Absolutely.
agendize that. I'd appreciate that.
Absolutely. There's a lot of newspaper articles because what's happening is much of the state that's served by investor-owned utilities are kind of moving in this direction. So at some point, board members may get questions from peers who live in other cities. And so I think it would be good and helpful to provide a little bit of context because we've been following this because there could be some indirect benefits or there could be some indirect consequences. And so we've been monitoring this. So certainly we'd be happy to provide that presentation at a later meeting.
Excellent. Thank you. And with that, prior to adjournment, I would like to have this meeting in honor of Wendy Treadway, and I'll ask for a moment of silence if that's appropriate. So we'll go to a moment of silence. And if I can receive a motion to adjourn. Entertain that now.
I move a motion to adjourn.
I'm sorry. Was that member Beraldi or member Abdul Rahman?
Yes.
Oh,
Beraldi.
motion made by member Beraldi, seconded by member Abdul Rahman. Can we have a roll call vote?
This is a roll call vote for item number 12. Vice Chair Seymour,
Aye.
Board Member Abdul Rahman,
Aye.
Board Member Beraldi,
Aye.
Board Member Bala,
Aye.
Board Member Showalter,
Aye.
Chair Madrano.
Aye.
The vote is 6 ayes, 0 nays, 1 absent, not present. Motion carries. Meeting adjourned.
And we are adjourned until February 24th, 5 o'clock.
Yes.
Great. I'll see you in February.